to be one of the trigger men.
Thank you, sir. Later in the show, you'll actually hear from the KGB. Oswald's past was hidden all these years as part of a cover-up. The truth, had it been known, had it come out, would have revealed there was a conspiracy. The conspiracy to kill the president needed a scapegoat, a patsy, someone who would take the blame. That's because there was a need for us to be directed away from the evidence, away from the fact that Kennedy was hit by 3 gunmen, firing from different positions. In a conspiracy that would embroil the nation in a cover-up so great that 12 years later, it would lead to the Watergate break-in. To understand the conspiracy that killed Kennedy and the cover-up that followed it, you must first take a step back into history to a man named Fidel Castro. In 1959, the Eisenhower administration got the shock of its life. Fidel Castro, a young freedom fighter that Washington had armed and supported, announced to the world that he was a communist. Eisenhower ordered the CIA to recruit Cuban refugees. Special military camps were set up around the country to equip and train this new force. It became known as Operation 40. But Castro continued to thumb his nose at Washington. So in June of 1960, as Castro invited Soviet advisors onto his soil, a new decision was made: assassinate Castro. Joining us now to explain more of this history is the Chief Counsel for the Christic Institute, Daniel Sheehan. The Christic Institute is a non-profit public interest law firm best known for winning the Karen Silkwood case. Mr. Sheehan, what group made the decision to assassinate Castro?
Well, we know, James, that Richard Bissell was involved, who was the deputy director for plans and covert operations for the CIA. And we know that J.C. King, who was the director of Western Hemisphere operations for the agency, was involved. And also Sheffield Edwards, the chief of security. But clearly someone from the 5412 committee, the ultra-secret committee to direct covert operations, had to have been involved in this decision at that high a level to carry out something so important.
We understand that billionaire Howard Hughes helped to set up the ultra-black operation. What role did he play?
Well, obviously, whoever this was on the 5412 committee that made this decision to kill Castro had apparently contacted Howard Hughes to get him to help set up this operation for deniability. And that is the point through which a man by the name of Robert Mayhew got assigned through the Hughes organization to carry this operation out to set up a political assassination unit, an ultra-secret political assassination unit of some dozen Cubans to kill Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Well, what happened, James, was that the decision that Robert Mayhew was involved with was directed by the 5412 committee to bring in the mob. He contacted Johnny Roselli out of Las Vegas, and then Sam Giancana, and Sam Giancana contacted Santo Trafficante. These guys all got involved in the way they had it handled. The way they had it handled was the CIA assigned specific people to supervise this assassination team. E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis, very specifically, were assigned to control the training and assignment of this extremely secret political assassination team that was set up in 1960.
Mr. Marchetti, had the CIA worked with the Mafia before?
Oh, certainly. The CIA got involved with the Mafia in World War II when it was OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, in order to have the help of organized crime in their guerrilla activities in Sicily and Italy. And since then, the CIA has worked with organized crime in the Corsican Brotherhood in France, in running dope from the Middle East. They got involved with it in Southeast Asia, and eventually they got involved with crime in Latin America as well. And this brings them into Castro, because they were working with organized crime, Meyer Lansky, and that part of the Mafia in Cuba.
I see. Let's tell you more about the assassination team. Its name would change with every operation. For this program, we'll call it S-Force. With the help of organized crime figures and under the direction of the CIA, 15 professional assassins were recruited to form a special operations unit an ultra-black assassination squad. Their job was political assassination. Their target was Fidel Castro. It was a murder incorporated, and it was a secret no one wanted to reveal. In November 1960, Nixon lost the election.
Kennedy will be the next president of the United States.
And John Kennedy was sworn in as president.
So help me God.
Kennedy was not told about the existence of escorts. This secret was kept from him by Allen Dulles, director of the CIA. However, Kennedy was briefed on the other aspects of Operation 40.
We must never be lulled into believing that either power has yielded its ambition for world domination.
In April 1961, he ordered thousands of Cuban refugees, trained and equipped by the CIA, to invade Cuba. This operation became known as the Bay of Pigs.
It was really a good plan because early in the planning they brought in Marines who were specifically trained for over-the-beach operations.
But it turned into a disaster when somebody in the chain of command double-crossed Kennedy and canceled the final bombing run. Kennedy did not order the planes to stand down, but he was blamed. John Kennedy was suddenly hated by the Cuban exiles and all those who supported them.
We'll kill Kennedy, and nobody will know who did it.
Because Cuba was protected by the Soviet Union, Kennedy had to placate Khrushchev. He promised he would cease all CIA-related operations. But he also tried to placate the Cuban exiles. So he changed his mind and continued operations against Cuba. Kennedy's actions led to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev found out that Kennedy lied to him and had continued CIA operations against Cuba. What Kennedy did was simply rename Operation 40 Operation Mongoose. Mr. Sheehan, what did Khrushchev do when he found out that Kennedy lied to him?
Well, what he did was to agree to send missiles to Cuba and to send some bombers into Cuba to start to fortify Cuba against what he expected was a future threatened invasion, again, of Cuba by Kennedy's Cuban forces.
And how close did we come to a nuclear war?
Well, it was pretty extraordinary. What happened, obviously, is the United States picked up the transport of these missiles on ships coming to Cuba and confronted Khrushchev. Kennedy confronted Khrushchev and told him that they were drawing a line in the ocean along a particular longitude, and if any of these missiles, new missiles, crossed this line, we would technically be in a state of war with the Soviet Union. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff had voted that if the ships did cross that line, that we should go to nuclear first strike to maintain our credibility.
And they crossed and?
Well, the fact is they did cross, and the Joint Chiefs reconvened and voted to go to nuclear first strike and told Kennedy that he should strike right now.
How did Kennedy react to the threat of nuclear war?
Well, according to the people that were there with him, is that he was stunned at that moment. He had come to that critical moment of history that everyone had feared, and he was being told by his Joint Chiefs that he should strike out completely against the Soviet Union. He was in his rocking chair, and apparently a tear came to his eye, and he said, I simply will not be the one that does this. And he immediately ordered all U.S. nuclear forces to stand down. This moment was what we call in kind of religious circles a metanoia, almost an experience that transported Kennedy to a different level of insight into the problems that had been being created by this Cuban plan.
Did Khrushchev really want a nuclear war?
No, it appears, James, the travesty would have been is that he had ordered the ships to stop, but they had not gotten the communication, or they had just gone across the line completely by mistake. So it would have been a horrible tragedy to have this thing happen that way.
Kennedy had come face to face with nuclear annihilation. He didn't want that to happen again. So he assured Khrushchev and Castro that the U.S. would keep its hands off Cuba. He ordered the CIA to stop interfering with Cuba. When they refused, he sent in the FBI to shut down their training camps.
They started dumping on Kennedy for attacking these bases and shutting them down and calling him a traitor.
Kennedy continued to make enemies as he pulled back from world confrontation. He put in the hotline to Moscow. He signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. That shook up the military-industrial complex. He ordered U.S. troops out of Vietnam, and that shook them up even more.
The idea was 1,000 guys out early, and then eventually everyone out by 1965. And he disagreed with his advisors. It was their opinion that we had to send combat troops, and if we didn't send combat troops, that Laos would fall and South Vietnam would fall. They even questioned the viability of India, Australia, and Japan. The whole structure of East Asia, they said, would be threatened if we allowed this to happen. So they were very serious about this.
But Kennedy was insistent. He wanted us out of Vietnam. He also decided he could no longer trust the CIA.
After the Bay of Pigs, Kennedy had decided to change the whole structure of how this government would carry out covert operations. And so he was transferring covert operations directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Shortly after that, he fired Allen Dulles, who had been the Director of Central Intelligence since 1953. That was a signal to the CIA of what Kennedy was going to do, or what he had done.
Kennedy was changing the status quo. The whispers started. From big business to the military. From disgruntled intelligence agents to anti-Castro Cubans and their right-wing supporters.
Kill Castro!
Kennedy had to go.
We'll get Castro. We'll kill Kennedy, that's who will kill Kennedy!
The mechanism was already in place. S-Force was available for hire, waiting for its next political target.
And they resolved at that point, then between May and June of 1963, that they were going to kill President Kennedy. And they were going to kill him either in Miami, because he was scheduled to come to Miami and have an open car parade there, or in Texas. And that was the decision that they made, to go forward and to kill him.